Peace to the 12. Y'all see the title, An Old Name of Africa. It's important to go into history and geography in this walk and this truth, because you can find things that are very revealing. All you have to do is look at old maps, ancient names of places, and that's what we're going to do. I'm also going to touch on the ancient Libyans, etc. All right, so let's get straight to it. An old name of Africa. For those of you that don't know, there was a man, or for those of you that don't know, I'm sure a lot of you do know, that Africa was named after Scipio Africanus. Now, people dispute this and say, no, they were calling it that before. They were calling it before all of his victory and his exploits. But that's just not to be the case. Now watch, I'm going to read what they say, what they allege, right? The origin of the name Africa has been debated forever, but it is a misconception that the continent was named after Roman general Scipio Africanus, nor is it named after Leo Africanus. So it says it's not. So it just so happens to be named Africa, and both Leo and Scipio have the name Africanus, right? Now they'll say that they came much later. Both of them got their names from Africa and not the other way around. That's bullshit, man. All right, I'm gonna prove it to you, right? That's why I told you the importance of maps, right? Because even in this thumbnail, you can already see where I'm going with this, man. So, the name Africa is not what this land used to be called. Now, in the Bible, which is what I always use as my reference point, being an Israelite, in the Bible, you never see the word Africa. All right, in the Bible, you use words like Ethiopia, because in the ancient world, way back when, people used to refer to Africa as Ethiopia, all right, or Kush land. All right, people also used to refer to Africa as Egypt, but Africa is never mentioned in the Bible one time. And in the time that we're going to, it wasn't mentioned in Africa either, in the old name of Africa. They didn't call it Africa. So this is a man, I probably pronounced his name wrong, but Herodotus. All right, Herodotus, he was a Greek historian. All right, and now, I don't really care about this guy, but he wrote a map that people would think of credible because they give this dude so much credit, right? And on his map, we're going to find out what Africa used to be called. You see, Africa used to be called Libya. All right. See, today when you think of Libya, you think of a small country that's located in Africa. But it turns out that at this time, Libya was the whole name of Africa according to this map in the time of Herodotus, the Greek historian. Right? Now, just to prove this even a little bit more further, you see Europe is in these big letters. You see Asia is in these big letters, and you see that Libya is in these big letters, which basically allows the viewer to understand that these three big letters represent the continent itself. As you can see, you got all these other lands, but they're in smaller font. All right, and Libya consists of the entirety of known Africa at that time. Now, this is important because when I get a Bible verse in a bit, in a wee bit, you're gonna understand what I'm talking about. All right, now let's just keep going. Now, people say, oh, Libya, that's just talking about North Africa. But you see on this map, you have Ethiopia as well. Ethiopia is part of East Africa, not North Africa. So it wasn't this just being North Africa, because Ethiopia is part of East Africa. All right, you have the whole East Africa right here. All right, the East Africa portion. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Now let's go to the scriptures, of course. Acts 2 and 5. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. So you had Jews in every nation under heaven. Now, what that means, as for those of you that know, this is short for Judah, the kingdom of Judah, right? Which consisted of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. For those of you that don't know that, I'm sure some of you brothers know that. But for those of you that don't, the kingdom of Israel was divided into two different kingdoms. You had the kingdom of Israel, and you had the kingdom of Judah. The kingdom of Judah I just broke down, and the kingdom of Israel had all the rest of the 12 tribes. I'll do a video on that at some point, but I'm going somewhere with this, right? Now remember, the ancient word for this was Libya. Remember, I went over that. That's the ancient name of Africa, or the old name of Africa. It's not the first name of Africa, because another name for Africa that most of you know is Kemet. All right, which means which is directly based off of Ham, who was also known as Kim. Whole nother video for another day. But this is where I want to go. Remember the word Libya, right? Acts 2 and 5. We have devout Israelites in every nation under heaven. All right. Now we're going to go down to verse 10. Actually, I'm just going to read 6 through 10. All right. F it. Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. Now this is where you get the concept of speaking tongues, right? I've broken this down before in a whole video on tongues. All the word tongue means is a language. So if you're speaking in tongues, you can speak multiple languages. You understand? So when you go to a church and you hear people go habalaba shabaluba dabahuba, that's not tongues, that's just gibberish. All right, and that's not biblical. All right, and the reason that it confounded people is because you had Israelites via the Holy Spirit who were able to speak languages of everyone's tongue without having the foreknowledge of said tongue. For example, it would be like me. I can't speak any German whatsoever, and I was teaching, right? Imagine I was teaching, and then all of a sudden I would be able to speak German with absolutely no practice. That's pretty much what happened. I mean, that is what happened, not even pretty much. So reading on, right? Because remember, they're talking to Jews in different nations, in every nation under heaven. They're talking to them, but they're talking to them in their own tongue, which means in their own language. Anyway, reading on verse 7, Acts 2 and 7. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? Exactly. So they're saying, wait, aren't these people from Galilee? How can they speak our language? That's what they're basically saying. Right? And how hear we every man in our tongue? So they're saying, how are we hearing every man in our own language, wherein we were born? All right, now verse 9. This is going to give you a list of the people that were there. The Parthians. All right, which, by the way, I encourage you brothers to look up the Parthian battery. All right, just to show you that we had knowledge of electricity even back then. But the Parthians, the Medes, the Elamites, and the dwellers in Mesopotamia, and in Judea, and in Cappadocia, in Pontus. Now check this out. Libya, about Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes. Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God. And they were all amazed and were in doubt, saying one to another, What meaneth this? Now the thing I'm focusing on is they're in parts of Libya. Now if you read this in today's standards, when you hear parts of Libya, you think of just the small state of Libya, but it's speaking about the continent of known Africa at that time. All right, so that's what I wanted to focus on. So it's very important that you see that in parts of Libya. So now you understand what I meant in the beginning when I said maps make a difference. Old ancient maps. But I just wanted to touch on that. Now when you look up Libya, right? And it just shows you got to pay attention to old maps. All right, and other old things. Like I always encourage brothers to read older books, because older books were a little bit more honest. Like for example, a book brothers can check out is a book titled Ancient and Modern Britons. I've mentioned it in many other videos. Ancient and Modern Britons, you get to learn about the so-called black people that were dwelling in Europe in the ancient times, as well as other things. But nonetheless, so Africa used to be called Libya. Now when I looked this up on Google, it told me that the Libyan Sea of Mare Libysum was the part of the Mediterranean Sea south of Crete between Cyrene and Alexandria. Now check this out. It says, in the Hellenistic period, the Berbers were known as Libyans. All right. Now this word Berber, hold on. A Greek term for the inhabitants of Berber world. Their lands were called Libya and referred to the known Africa continent. All right, so you refer to the known Africa continent, meaning they knew about the continent of Africa. Even now, Europe, Asia, and Africa are known as the Old World, and the New World countries are known as North America, South America, and Australia. Like, for example, mostly North and South America, though. The Americas. For example, when I'm really into animals, right? When you get into animals, you have Old World vultures, which consist of vultures that live in the Old World. I told you Africa, Europe, Asia. And then you have New World vultures, or New World birds in general, which are in the Americas. Just for more information on that. And that also goes into plants and other things as well. Nonetheless, now this word Berber is very important. All right. Now, so the Libyans were known as Berbers, right? Now, when you look up this word Berber in the etymology, the word etymology means origin of words. 1820 noun. So this is an 1820 definition. Berber, from the Arabic name for the peoples living in the mountains and deserts of North Africa, west of Egypt. Perhaps ultimately from Greek barbaros, or barbarians. So a Berber, or a so-called North African, we're just going to go with that, is really a barbarian in the Greek. All right, also known for Barbary, which as the name of their Hamitic language. So Hamite language, Barbary. So coming back here, you had Libyans, which at that time they would be known as the barbarians by the Greeks. All right, Barbary, North Africa, west of Egypt, ultimately from Greek barbaros. So the barbarians. So a Berber, another word for a Berber in short, is a barbarian. All right, according to the Greek. Now that's important because in the scriptures, the word barbarian is used in many different accounts. Paul, the Apostle Paul, was known for being around the dwellings of the barbarians. Now, why is that? Because you had Israelites in that region that he was teaching. All right, for those of you that know, Paul was tasked with speaking to the Gentiles. Now, the Gentiles are the Israelite foreigners, by the way. You know, I'll do a video on that very soon. As a matter of fact, one of my videos I have done, I just have to produce, is a video I have titled How We Became Heathen. So stick around for that. It'll be out shortly. But nonetheless, barbarian and barbarians is used in the scriptures of who Paul was hanging out with. Who were the barbarians? The barbarians would be the ancient Libyans. All right, they would be the ancient Libyans, as it says right here. Ancient Libya. All right, the Berber, the barbarian. All right, and Paul was around. Let's get a couple accounts. 1 Corinthians 14 and 11. Therefore, if I know not the meaning of the voice, I shall be unto him that speaketh a barbarian, and he that speaketh shall be a barbarian unto me. Where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor circumcision, uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Hamashiach is all and in all. So the reason he included the barbarian with the Greek, which the Greek is speaking about the Hellenized Israelites. Once again, I will cover that in the video coming out. But basically, yeah, we all got brought back in the fold. You can read about that in Acts, the 5th chapter and the 31st verse, about who yahawashi, who is called Christ, died for. Acts 5 and 31. Now, it's mentioned here also. Now, the barbarians, we kind of already touched on. The barbarians were the ancient Libyans, quote unquote, the Berbers. Now, we're going to see what these Berbers looked like. All right. This is the whole reason I'm even doing this video. At this time, we're going to see what they look like, right? So, this is a tribe known as the Taman Rasat, or Rasat. I can't really pronounce it. Taman Rasat. All right. The amalgam of peoples of North Africa, coalesced eventually into a distinct native population that came to be called Berbers, right? And I got this information from a brother, very astute brother. I believe his name is realhistorywww.com. So check him out. He has a lot of topics about about the history of the so-called black diaspora, and you know the ancient Europeans, anyway. Check him out. So they were called Berbers. These people right here, right? Distinguished primarily by cultural and linguistic attributes. The Berbers lacked a written language and hence tended to be overlooked or marginalized in historical accounts. Now, this could be true. However, I will say this. Oftentimes when historians say that a certain type of people, a certain group of people had no written language, it's really bullshit. All right, because writing a language is just practical. I just wanted to put that out there. So when people say they didn't have a written language, it'd be bullshit, man. A lot of times. Now, this case, this could be true. You did have societies that did so, but I'm just saying, like, I'll give you an example. They say the Spartans had no written language, but they did. Which, by the way, Spartans were Israelites. I'm gonna do a video on that sometime. Nonetheless, Roman, Greek, not Roman. We just went to Romans, right? Romans 1:14, right there. I'm indebted both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. We know that a Berber, another word for a Berber, is a barbarian. Now, this word Roman and Greeks. So, Roman, Greek, Byzantine, and Arab Muslim chroniclers typically depicted the Berbers as barbaric enemies. There goes that word barbaric, which comes from barbarian. And that's what they associated these Berbers with. So they were Berbers as barbaric enemies, troublesome nomads, or ignorant peasants. They were, however, to play a major role in the area's history. So these who you're looking at are what you would call a Berber. All right, the barbaric enemies of the Romans, the Greeks, the Byzantines, and the Arab Muslims. All right, we're going to get some more images on how they looked. Once again, these are the Taman Rasat. All right. Now, as you can clearly see, they are of a dark brown complexion. All right, what you would call swarthy. So, as he typed in this article, like all blacks in their native innocence, the Taman Rasatites take everyone and everything at face value, which is unfortunate. A lot of our people, and let me make this clear too. Just because someone is so-called black, that does not mean that they're an Israelite. The Hamites were people of color. The Japhites were people of color. I just wanted to throw that out there. But nonetheless, our people, specifically the Israelites, have this thing with accepting people at face value, like this brother stated. They are unconcerned that their ancestral lands are ruled by the descendants of invading conquerors of their lands and killers of their people, which is true. A little small short story, right? I had a cousin. Anyway, come to find out, we met this kid, right? This rich kid. And long story short, this kid got rich off of his grandfather, really his great-grandfather, who stole the land, the farmland, from my very own ancestors who owned that, man. You know, and he just stole it, burned it down, ran them out, and he got rich off that land. And that same cousin, he told me, oh yeah, but that's not his fault. So he was totally cool with that happening, man, which is madness. But nonetheless, they see only the good in everyone and everything. Yeah, Jake does that, unfortunately. You know, I ain't gonna say everybody, but a very notable portion. But anyway, so these are the Taman Rasats. Now, we talked about the barbarians. We know the Berbers were known as barbarians in the Greek language, the Barbaros. We talked about how Africa was also known as Libya. we've talked about that Paul went to speak, or that we had devout Jews that were in Libya. Now we're going to look at how these barbarians looked. All right, now we're going to look at the appearance of these barbarians. All right, now we're going to get this right. This is a depiction of Almoravid General Abu Bakr riding a camel with a whip of knotted cords from the 1413 chart of Messiah de Villadestis. Abu Bakr Ibn Umar Ibn Turgat. You know, I'm not very good at these languages, but anyway, he died in 1087. All right, and he was a chieftain of the Lemtuna Berbers. So he was a chieftain of the Lemtuna barbarians of the Western Sahara, Banu Turget clan, and commander of the Almoravids from 1056 until his death. His brother was Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamatuni. This word Yahya, to me, signifies that he was most likely an Israelite. For those of you that know, in Psalms, I believe that's 48. I could be wrong. But nonetheless, in Psalms, you'll read it as Jah, but the J is really a Y, so it's really Yah. All right, you know that, and that's the short version of the Most High's name, which is Yahawah. But Yah, even you hear this a lot. People say Yah. That's where it comes from. So for this brother to be named Yahya, it tells me that more than likely he was an Israelite that happened to be a barbarian. Now, here's another barbarian picture, right? I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you brothers can pause it and read it yourselves. But I will read the blue part that I bordered. So this is a rift pirate. All right, the rift pirate. Now we're going to go down to here, right? The head we have engraved is the portrait of one of these Berber pirates, one of these barbarian pirates, taken prisoner by Ben Abo, and a pretty specimen he is. So this is a picture of the rift pirate right here, and as you can see, he was a so-called black man. He was a man of color. I'm not going to read all of this, but as I said, as you can see, this is what the Berbers looked like at this time, which I'm going to go into the modern day Libyans and how they got there. Just bear with me. I'm going to get you another picture of the rift pirates. These are the rift pirates of Morocco in 1850. Once again, as you can see, these barbarians, these rift pirates, these Berbers, they were dark-skinned people of color. Okay, so we're going to go down here, right? Read what it says about these pirates. These pirates destroyed thousands of French, Spanish, Italian, and British ships, and long stretches of coast in Spain and Italy were almost completely abandoned by their inhabitants, discouraging settlement until the 19th century. From the 16th to the 19th century, pirates captured an estimated 800,000 to 1.25 million Europeans as slaves, mainly from seaside villages in Italy, Spain, and Portugal, but also from France, Britain, the Netherlands, Ireland, and as far away as Iceland and North America. So this is how much expanse they had. Now let me say this too. Unfortunately, some of these slaves that were captured were Israelites themselves. You know, I could do a whole thing on the Moors versus the Israelites, but it was a very bloody conflict, which is unfortunate because a large portion of the Moors were Israelites themselves that had been converted into Islam. But that's another video for another day. But as you can see, these rift pirates were around for hundreds of years. All right. Now, we all know that these pirates, aka Berbers, aka barbarians, were North African. I showed you what they looked like. They were in what you call ancient Libya. All right, they're also in the Bible. So the next thing I will show is what. So when you hear about this man Conan the Barbarian, the fictional character, he wouldn't have looked like this, man. Conan the Barbarian would have looked something like this, man. So who the hell is this guy? But nonetheless, I just wanted to add that in there, man. I'm gonna touch on something else that happened similar to this too in a minute. Now, since I'm talking about the Berbers, I'm going to do a little brief thing about the Moors. Most of you know who the Moors are, of course. But I'm not going to go too much in depth. They're just going to get their own separate video. But I just wanted to type it in because they were from North Africa, as they say. They were also from parts of Spain, etc. But look, the word Moor, according to etymology, once again, the word etymology means origin of the word. So Moor, a North African. A Berber. So a Berber, aka a barbarian, right? One of the race dwelling in Barbary. Alright. Old French, Moor. Roman Northwest Africa. A region now corresponding to northern Algeria and Morocco. See, Morocco pirates. And I'll say this too. A lot of pirates that you see in history were actually Israelites. I'll put it like that. I'll do a video on pirates at some time, but I got to get a lot of information. But, nonetheless, now check this out more, right? Black. But this adjective only appears in late Greek and may as well be from the people's name as the reverse. This word was around even more than that, but that's another video. I'll do that on the Moor video. Also applied to the Arabic conquerors of Spain being a dark people in relation to Europeans, which the Europeans, you're going to find out, look more similar to these Moors than you think. I'm not going to do that on this video, but just in general, their name in the Middle Ages was synonym for Negro later. So this word Moor was synonymous with the word Negro, right? You can watch the movie Black Knight starring Martin Lawrence, right? It's a movie known as Black Knight starring Martin Lawrence. I haven't seen it in a very long time. I was a child when I watched it. But in that movie, Martin Lawrence is speaking, and this so-called Caucasian man looks at him and he says, "Silence, Moor." So he called him a Moor. Now, as you all know, Martin Lawrence is a so-called Negro. So I just wanted to throw that in. So yes, Moor is synonymous with Negro. Yeah, the Dutch Moors, the German Moors, the Danish Moors, the Spanish Moors. All right. This man in particular, Salakia, his name was Muley Ahmad of the Hafsid dynasty. The Hafsids were a Berber dynasty. See, a barbarian dynasty, Berber. All right, ruling modern Tunisia from 1229 to 1574. Their territories were from east and modern Algeria to the west of modern Libya during their zenith. Yeah, to the west of modern Libya. Once again, Libya used to be the name of a very large portion of Africa, if not the whole continent. But let's get some more pictures. This is Muley Ahmad Rasuli in Morocco in 1908. He was the last of the Berber Barbary pirates. So the pirates went all the way to 1908. He was a whole pirate, man. And this man, this is Bay of Tripoli, Libya. All right. He was a modern voyage, or this source is from the Modern Voyager and Traveler through Europe, Asia, Africa, and America. All right. So as you see, all these people of color. Now, we talked about the Moors, the Berbers, and we also talked about how Conan, you know, this is this is not what Conan the Barbarian should have looked like. Now, they did this again in another film. This film was titled The Wind and the Lion. And in this film, The Wind and the Lion, check this out, right? It's an American film titled The Wind and the Lion. Came out in 1975. It was made about the last of the Berber Barbary pirates. So we just saw the last of the Berber Barbary pirates. We just saw him right here, right? But who the hell is this guy? You know, Muley Ahmad Rasat. We just saw him. This is him. But of course, in the fantasy world of the albino history, there were no blacks, only albinos and their close mulattoes. You know, so yeah, man. This is historically inaccurate, which is always how it is, man. You know, I could go on and on about all the historical inaccuracies. You know, it's funny, man. This is why you don't accept conventional history told to you by the ones who put you in subjection and slavery and raped, robbed, and murdered. Because when you do, you start affiliating all historical figures as this guy, man. But once you do your research, like me and a lot of other brothers, you start to understand things. And then you start to understand who you truly were, and that your history does not start at damn slavery, man. And first of all so-called black people weren't even slaves at the time of slavery. All right, as a matter of fact, you can look up a slave owner by the name of Anthony Johnson. Look him up. All right. And he was a so-called black man, which was off as hell. How could you own your own people? But it happened, man. So how did this happen? So we know that this was a lie. We just proved it. But so how did this happen? How does Libya look the way it looks today? All right, these people. Well, we're gonna find out. How does what you call now Libya look how it looks now in so-called North Africa? We're gonna find out. In 640 A.D., in the year 640 A.D., June 6th to be specific, the Arab Muslim army sent by Caliph Omar begins a siege of Heliopolis. The city succumbs mid-late July, paving way for a Muslim conquest of Byzantine Egypt. So that is how this occurred. 640 AD, this is when they started to push themselves into the land of North Africa. Before that, it was not so. So this is where these people come from, the Libyans of today. All right, now it didn't just happen overnight, just like how America didn't get colonized overnight. As a matter of fact, for those of you that might be skeptical, remember something. You see how these people look like this today, and they're the majority of Libya today. Well, remember something, right? America didn't used to look how it looked either. So you got to keep that in mind. I always use this as an example. When you look at so-called America today, 61.6% of its inhabitants are who you would call so-called white, so-called Caucasian in North America. Now, we all know that wasn't the case. We had Aboriginal as well as Native Americans that were in this land. And by the way, the land was not called America. America is named after Amerigo Vespucci. In the same way, Africa got its name from this guy. America got its name from Amerigo Vespucci, right? Amerigo Vespucci. America is named after Amerigo Vespucci, the Italian explorer who set forth in the revolutionary concept that the lands that Christopher Columbus sailed in 1492. So that's where America gets its name. So to you so-called black people of the Western Hemisphere that call yourselves African Americans, just know that you're naming yourself after two different so-called Caucasians. So why would you be proud to call yourself an African American? The name is ludicrous. But because you are neither. That's why you have to wake up and realize that you're God's chosen people. All you Israelites that are scattered abroad. So let's just get some more, like we already touched on, right? I touched on that in 640 AD, the siege happened where the Arabs seized Libya, North Africa. Now, 642 to 1830 is when, just like how, like I told you, just like how America didn't used to be like this, same concept happened with this, right? Let's just get to it. It took this long. It took a long time for it to look like this. It didn't just happen overnight. So notes from onward things became very tricky with the coming of Islam, which was first spread by Arabs. All North Africans became Arabized in names, just as the Turks had before them. So that's how our people, or some of our people, because some of these people were Hamites, but that's how a lot of barbarians got their so-called Muslim names, due to the conquest of the Arab conqueror. Just like how we have American names now, or what you would call, Anglo names. Anyway, the first Turkish, Salaki, let me go back to here. Caliph Harun al-Rashid, that the caliphs began assigning Egypt to Arabized Turks. So Egypt was assigned to Arab Turks rather than to Arabs. The first Turkish dynasty in Egypt was that of Ibn Tulun, who entered Egypt at 868 AD. So in 868 AD, he entered Egypt. We know that in 640 AD, that's when Egypt began their conquest. The last black Arab caliph was Abbas al-Qawam. He reigned in 1031 to 1075. He was disposed of by a Turk sultan, Tughril Beg. After which, on to today, the realm of Islam was actually controlled by Turks, not Arabs. This was reinforced with the coming to North Africa of the Ottoman Turks. And the Turks, another video for another day, but the Turks were mostly what you would know as to be so-called Caucasians. And, you know, even Ishmael, for those of you that don't know, Ishmael was originally dark-skinned. He just looks the way he looks through admixture with the Turks, which were Caucasian Muslims, you know. And anybody that watching this and they say they disagree with anything I'm saying, hey man, do your own video then. Do your own video and do it, man. I really don't give a damn. I speak on what I know to be true. Alright, and I just want to do one more thing before I get out of here. So before these people lived in the land of Libya, we're going to look, before these people lived in the land of Libya, we're going to look at ancient Libya. We're going to look at ancient photos of ancient Libya. This is the prehistory of Central North Africa. Right? The Levants. You know, I'm not really going to go too much into this. I just want to show you guys the cave paintings of Tisai in Azure. Alright, you see Algeria, Libya, Egypt. We're going to find out what they look like originally. So these are the cave paintings of the Tisai in Azure. As you can see, they're all dark-skinned, so-called black people. Now I'm going to show you the second photo, which is clear as day. You can see this person. He's got a whole afro. So these are the ancient Libyans. This man is by a giraffe. You know, these are the ancient Libyans. The afro gives it away. These are the women. And these are a bunch of cattle. I don't know if they're at war or what's going on, but nonetheless. Now, this is a matter of public record. This is an ancient painting that took place in about 6000 BC, is what they say. So far, so good. At least we know that whites first showed up after the Tisai in Azure art was created. So, without a shadow of doubt, the ancient Libyans looked like this. I just wanted to show that. And with that, hopefully this lesson was edifying. This was what I said in the old name of Africa. And with that, I say peace to the 12. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahawah, in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahawashi. Yahawah being the name of the Heavenly Father. And Yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel. And I want to say, I want to give a strong shalom to the brothers doing this work in truth and sincerity, to you people listening and learning, and to the elders that have been doing this thing before me. Lord willing, we're almost out of here. Shalom, which means peace.